What place does that kind of self-help, positive thinking have in your spectrum of tools in the toolbox for a person trying to thrive? Any place at all? No place at all?
No place, I have to say.
No, I mean, all right,
if you're completely negative, right, and if you're somebody who expects everything to go wrong and that you won't enjoy anything when it happens, then maybe you need to think about that, you know? but the alternative to this positive, manic, bright siding of everything is not being negative and depressed, it's being realistic. Yeah, there can be a problem with too much debt and too much reliance on subprime loans, as we saw until the breakdown in '07. But nobody could say that.
You talk about what happened to what we used to think of as sober finance, the world of sober finance. And even when George W. Bush was elected, people said, well, he's our first business grad to become a president. Were we just misunderstanding what they were teaching in business schools?
Well, no, something did happen. See, I have many criticisms of the corporate capitalism, but I always thought it was rational. You know, there's a bottom line. You can't fool around. You can't just, do wishful thinking. But wishful thinking had come in by the 90s and the 00s, that you could have what you wanted. If you were a CEO and you're making $20 million a year, you cannot be wrong about anything.
Is there a racial piece to all of this? Well, there's a question. Is there a racial piece to all of this?
Well, I don't think it's mixed. I mean, positive thinking began with white Protestants, white sort of middle-class Protestants in the 19th century. But in the 1970s and on, there was a growth among the black Protestants of the prosperity gospel. Also among white Protestants. I mean, it's equal.
Because I wonder, because if you had in the 19s and 20s and 30s, it was okay for working people who were laid off jobs to be angry, and you had left populists as well as right populists like Father Coughlin out there rallying the troops. Was there later in the century a reluctance to talk about anger because it might not just have been white anger, it might have been some scary other sort?
I'm not so sure it was a response to that, but I think it applies, it could apply to workers. I've seen it applied to women. What are you whining about? Whatever your status in this society, and it's not a very equal society, you're supposed to suck it up and smile and accept it and, hope that you will be one of the lucky ones who gets rich or accepted by the male hierarchy or whatever.
Do we treat women patients differently from men? There's a loaded question for you.
Do we treat
women patients differently from men in this regard?
I think so. Well, men get it too. I was surprised to find out that men with prostate cancer, for example, will run into oncologists who have written and said, this is really a gift to you, this chance to have prostate cancer and come out being a more evolved person, which is what they tell breast cancer people. But there's much, much more intense infantilization of women who have illnesses, that they should kind of regress into dependency on their doctors and not question their treatments.
Who's Martin Seligman, and why do you have such a problem with him?
Oh, Martin Seligman is a man who has done more than anybody to legitimize the popular sort of positive psychology thinking. He's what's called a positive psychologist. He invented, in a way, positive psychology, which sounds like a good idea. Let's look at not just human unhappiness and neurosis, but let's look at joy and, all those sorts of things. But it has turned out, unfortunately, to become very much a way of legitimating all this sort of self-help pop psychology kind of positive thinking.
You, at the end of the book, will probably get grief for comparing positive thinkers to Stalinists. But the comparison does lead one to believe that there is an afterlife.
No, I'm not comparing them to Stalin. I just found out, to my great surprise, that this kind of positive thinking ideology was intense in Soviet-style communism. I mean, here you could lose your job for being a negative thinker. In the Soviet Union, you might go to a labor camp for being a, quote, pessimist. So it's about control.
So
it's
is there
power.
an afterlife? Can we recover from bright-sidedness?
Yeah, I think we should be in the process right now. We should be really looking at what's happening in the world And I think, from what I'm hearing from people, and the book has just come out, but I'm getting a lot of mail from people who have heard about it and say, thank goodness. I lost my husband. I had this terrible disease, this and that other thing happened to me. And everybody was saying, smile, get over it. There's a bright side to this. And not acknowledging anybody's pain is what it comes down to. Like, we don't have time for anybody's pain. You can't put everything aside right away. If you've lost your job and you're spiraling down toward poverty, you have a right to be angry, not cheerful.
Barbara Ehrenreich's new book is Bright-Sided: How the Relentless Promotion of Positive Thinking Has Undermined America. Check it out. It's just out from Metropolitan Books. There's a link at our website, GRITtv.org. Not too cheerily. I'll thank you very much for coming in, Barbara. It's always great to have you. You're watching Grit TV.